Shifts are used in Time Track to control the attendance rules which employees are supposed to adhere to. To open the shift form, select the shift icon from the administrator homepage. To create a new shift, select the new icon from the icon ribbon. The shift configuration consists of 5 components: the header, the labour type definition, the core times definitions, the authorised hours setup, and the automatic clock-out configuration. The key fields on the header are as follows. Logical midnight, used for shifts that have hours on 2 separate calendar days, tells the application when to stop one report date and move on to the next report date. A good rule of thumb is to set the logical midnight 12 hours from the midpoint between shift start time and end time. Report date adjustment. This is used to place transaction times onto the proper report date for shifts that relate to 2 separate calendar days. When report date adjustment is set to next day, a labour transaction that begins on one day and ends on the next will be counted towards the report date corresponding with the transaction stop. When report date adjustment is set to previous day, a labour transaction that begins on one day and ends on the next will be counted towards the report date corresponding with the transaction start. The shift type, this specifies whether the shift is a static one or a dynamic one. Finally, there are 4 overtime calculation methods: daily, daily and weekly, weekly, and California. The daily overtime method in a dynamic shift allows overtime to be granted when a certain number of hours have been worked on that day. Daily overtime method in a static shift grants overtime when an employee works outside of the normal shift hours, regardless of how many hours they worked in total. Daily and weekly works the same as the daily overtime method, except this method also includes a complete week component. The weekly overtime method starts accumulating hours at the beginning of the shift week and grants overtime when a threshold of hours have been reached for the week. The California overtime method is designed to give the employee the better of the daily overtime or weekly overtime method. Next, we have the labour type configuration. The labour type configuration specifies the labour type code used by the underlying ERP to identify the hours types. Static shifts also require overtime before shift and double time before shift. Next, we have the core times configuration. This is the basic definition of the schedule, specifying the shift start and end times for each day, scheduling breaks, and identifying which are working and which are non-working days. We then have on the Authorized Hours tab the ability to enter the authorized hours and to define the premium periods for the shift. Finally, we have the Auto Clock Out. This is activated by selecting a time of day to invoke the Auto Clock Out. The options are at midnight, logical midnight, or after shift. So once a shift has been created, we need to hit save to commit these selections. Any changes made to a shift configuration will become effective the next time the employee clocks in, and changes may be made retroactively after an employee is clocked out by performing a temporary shift change for that report date. More details on setting up a shift can be found in the Shift Details video.